If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. And now, the Sunday address. The 2024 election may be on the books, but there's still a lot left to be said, particularly when it comes to the ongoing war against black people, which some have called the war on woke. Our ideological ground should be considered holy ground, but holy ground means very little if you don't know how to defend it. When debating with people, especially those who you know are acting in bad faith, you have to be extremely careful what words you allow them to get away with using. You don't want to let your enemy set the terms of the debate, because once they've suckered you into accepting a false premise, you also have to accept the false conclusions that go along with it. That's how the bad guys wind up winning the debate, or at least feeling as if they've managed to mitigate the number of points they would have otherwise lost. The war on woke is actually a war on reality. Woke means you know how the world is, not that you like it, but you recognize it for what it is. People like Christopher Rufo blatantly said in plain language that he was part of an ongoing effort to redefine the cultural lexicon, not based on reality, but based on a false premise that he and his multimillionaire backers want people to believe. This is where weasel words come in. Words are the currency of thought. We use words to not merely transmit information, but to transmit ideas as well, and ideas are far more than abstract concepts. They are also a set of predetermined and pre-existing premises as well. Words don't just have meanings, they have origins too. That's where we get the word etymology from. It means the origins and evolution of words. Words are how we encapsulate ideas. We give ideas a tangible or at the very least a quantifiable form when we use words. But what happens when someone deliberately distorts or even changes the meanings of words because they can't win a debate any other way? This is what George Orwell wrote about in his classic novel 1984. In that book, the so-called Ministry of Truth had one mission: to control the public mind through the censorship of history, but more importantly, through the redefinition of words. This is where we get phrases like Orwellian doublespeak from. Doublespeak was one of the phrases that Orwell originated in his novel. What it means is to use language that deliberately obscures, distorts, or reverses the meaning of words. When you see Rufo and company running around with their propaganda campaign to, as he put it, recodify critical race theory so that it includes all kinds of unpopular ideas that it actually doesn't mean, this is reversing the meaning of words. It's exactly what Orwell warned against. He warned against it, said look out for people who do it, and don't let them get away with it. Well, people already have when it comes to the word woke. During slavery, white society tried to clean up slavery by renaming it the peculiar institution. And that's an example of euphemisms. Somebody who's trying to use a word with an actual secondary meaning that's the opposite of what it really means. But with the white right, we see them using a new tact entirely. Not merely using or even inventing new words, but changing the definitions of words we already know. The stated goal of Rufo and his wealthy backers was to cause confusion. They couldn't push their racist agenda any other way. Of course, they weren't doing it just for kicks and giggles. They were doing it for what they thought was going to be massive political gain. In the red states, they managed to make some noise, but then again, that's preaching to the choir. What they wanted was to take this thing national, to show that this was going to be, as Rufo put it, a national blueprint. Okay, well, what happened when Ron DeSantis tried to take the anti-woke hysteria national? He thought that he was going to go to the White House, but instead his rocket ship to the stars crashed on takeoff. Rufo and his pals readily conceded that they had failed in the culture wars, that the so-called left had won. Now, when he says left, that's a euphemism for black activists and the few non-black ones who occasionally agree with us. So since the white right had lost the culture wars in the 1960s, they set out to start a new culture war with a new strategy, trying to redefine the terms of the debate before the debate even takes place, or as Rufo put it, recodifying the words themselves. Try to give people a false idea of what critical race theory means or what woke means before they even hear about it. And then they start attacking this straw man that they themselves created. Woke, as a bit of urban sociological lingo, came from the black community. And the attack on woke, as with so many other horrible things, began with Barack Obama. Shortly after the BLM movement began, people began calling for the defunding of the police. Then again, the right wing should have been on board with it. They're always calling for schools to be defunded if they fail to perform at a certain level. They call for certain government agencies to be defunded if they disapprove of them. So you have people on the left who took a page from the GOP playbook. They decided if it's good enough for everybody else, it ought to be good enough for the thugs in blue. But of course, white supremacy is all about double standards. Now, Obama was the one who led the charge to attack woke as being bad and terrible, and I don't want to hear any more about this. And this sentiment was echoed by clowns like nigga Jim Clyburn, who viciously slandered activists as threatening to cost Democrats the 2020 election with all this woke nonsense about defunding the police. We see how well that worked. In 2020, Democrats had a clean sweep. Meanwhile, in 2024, when Negro Jim Clyburn got to have it all his own way, Democrats crashed and burned. They got run out the yard. The white left sent out a couple of black sock puppets to lead the charge on wokeness, but that opened the door for all of these white racists to do the same. Remember, Obama came out the gate first, and next thing you know, you had Fox News and others who followed. That was deliberate. Wokeness came out of the BLM protest, which also coincided with Rufo's phony hysteria about critical race theory, sending these roving bands of largely paid crisis actors to go from one school board meeting to the next and make a nuisance of themselves, screaming and yelling at the people there at the school board. And of course, Fox News always makes sure that their cameras are in tow. That's a prime example of manufacturing a controversy. There was something that nobody was even complaining about, that nobody even cared about, but these guys decided to invent it out of whole cloth because they were already losing the fight with the 1619 Project having swept the country, and this was supposed to be their half-brained attempt at counter-programming. Since both critical race theory and woke had to do with black people, Rufo and his white media allies on the right, such as Fox News and others, began to use a classic rhetorical trick: false association. That's when you take a word and use it in close proximity to another word that has nothing to do with it. For example, say critical race theory and white genocide, or critical race theory and attacking white students, or to say woke and transgender bathrooms. Two separate things that have nothing to do with each other, but if you use them in close proximity long enough, people start to think that there might be something connected, right? Now again, the people who are misusing these words, they know exactly what they're doing. Chris Hedges showed us that one. They use arguments about transgenderism as a shield to hide behind, but whenever they talk about woke, they always make sure to tell you that, well, woke includes a lot of things. Their rantings about transgender this or that is merely camouflage for their real gripe, which is always against black people. They'll say a few words about transgender bathrooms just so they can go ahead and say, see, I addressed it, but then they start blabbering about cancel culture, which they never have a problem with if the person being canceled is someone they don't like, especially if they're black. Notice how they never actually stick up for anyone who they don't like who's being dragged or quote-unquote canceled. But these attacks by the ideological right could never have been pulled off without the intentional and deliberate collaboration and cooperation of Democrats and the white left. Because when Obama began to attack woke, everyone understood exactly what he was talking about, that he was directly replying and attacking the goals and aims of the black community. Again, you can't separate words from their origins. Woke, critical race theory, this came out of the black community. So when you have people who are claiming that these are quote-unquote Marxist ideas, that's a lie. Last time I checked, Karl Marx never said a word about critical race theory or woke. The people you see jumping on these bandwagons to attack CRT or woke, they know that the way they're using these words is more or less a pack of lies. Look what happened to Bethany Mandel when she was merely asked to define what woke means.
Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple times, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, I mean, woke is sort of the idea that this is going to be one of those moments that goes viral. I mean, woke is something that's very hard to define, and we've spent an entire chapter defining it. It is sort of the understanding that we need to totally reimagine and redo society in order to create hierarchies of oppression. It's hard to explain in a 15-second soundbite.
Yeah, look, your time.
And notice that she didn't get indignant about her failure to actually define woke because she knew that she had been caught in her lie. This is the reason why Christopher Rufo is considered to be important to the white right, because his job is to popularize this kind of asinine propaganda. You gotta lie about the words that are being used. You gotta try to redefine them because you think if you can, hopefully now you can win debates that you had always been losing. They also know, though, that going along with this recodification gives them rhetorical cover to say all kinds of anti-black things that they ordinarily couldn't. As Neely Fuller said, white society knows the rules of racism. They have to. They wouldn't be able to maintain and perpetuate their racialist hierarchy if they didn't know the rules of racism and didn't enforce them viciously. People don't accept false definitions of words unless it's something they already disagree with beforehand. This is why I posted that briefing about Christopher Hedges, who, given his body of work, should be called Christopher Rufo Sr. In Hedges' case, he doesn't even have the benefit of being able to claim that he was talking about transgender issues. He made it crystal clear his problem with woke or cancel culture has to do with race, and that he rejects the idea of systemic racism altogether. This guy is a case study in the prototypical white liberal who hates black people but tries to use us as a cloak for his own white agenda, one that benefits only him. Why does truth matter? Because truth is reality. Truth is what's real. And we have to live in reality. Now, you don't have to live in the real world, but the problem is you can't live anywhere else. Lies are a problem, not just because it manipulates and twists and destroys, but it's a problem because ultimately it doesn't work, largely because it doesn't exist. And this is the reason why as black people we have to be very careful of the debates that we get into and the words that we use, and allowing people to pejoritize terms that they ought not be able to. If you're not able to protect your ideological ground, then your opponents are going to run you right off of it. And this kind of failure to actually learn how to debate starts in the home. What happens to black children who are not being taught the rudiments of point and counterpoint? In the black community, this is the majority of the people who are becoming parents. And what are they teaching their children? What are they preparing their children to do in the world? Not enough. Bad guys are teaching their children how to tell lies, and they're trying to fortify their lies with paid propagandists like Chris Rufo. Are you preparing your black children to tell the truth? Or are you preparing them to get turned up at the club or to get turned out in the streets or in prison? There's an old saying that history is a lie agreed upon. Well, that's what white power is made of it. I gave you a more practical definition. History is whatever people are told the most often. And it's true. History is whatever passes into popular knowledge. Whatever is repeated the most often is what people remember. And if they don't remember it, then it's as if it never happened. And even if you tell people about it, they'll believe it wasn't very important if you don't mention it very often. Well, like so much else under white supremacy, that's how things are, but that's not how it has to be. History can be 100% accurate. But in order for that to happen, we have to be 100% honest. The problem isn't history, it's who's telling it. That's the problem. History books written by paid liars who are themselves being paid by the racist power brokers who control the society. They've perverted history into nothing more than a justification of all their crimes. To make the depraved satanic carnival we call a society seem like it was inevitable, that things had to turn out this way and couldn't have gone any other way. And for those who managed to remain skeptical regardless, they also created an associated narrative that things are getting better all the time. Ours is a journey of inevitable progress. Things are certainly better now than they were in the past. Now, if you buy into that one, they can go ahead and walk you straight through the gates of hell and telling you the whole time is the gates of heaven. The myth of progress is the quintessential American lie, but it's also one that people have bought into the most. Again, if you allow people to set the terms of the debate, you've already lost before you even begin. You got to make sure that you come into any sort of discussion with somebody that you know is operating in bad faith with the presupposition that anything they say isn't true. Don't just allow it. And that starts with the words that they use. As Dr. Claude Anderson and others have taught us, things haven't changed one iota since the plantations. All we have are a handful of compliant bootlicks who white power put on TV or gave token positions in the government or corporate America to. That's it. As black people, we've made a bad habit of giving up things that we've created. It doesn't matter if it's the music that we create, art that we create, or if it's the ideas that we've contributed to the society. Everybody gets to claim what we've created, shoehorn themselves into our story, or invalidate it altogether. I'm not saying that you need to go on a jihad in order to defend the word woke, but what I am saying is the principle of defending what you've created, especially as it pertains to your life, that does have value. When you allow your enemy to come along and call himself pejoratizing the words that you've created, especially as it pertains to your liberation and your life, then what they've also done is they've invalidated your ideas as well. This is what Orwell warned about. How do you say that you're oppressed if you allow somebody to say that the word oppression doesn't mean what it actually says, or worse, if they try to say the word oppression doesn't exist at all? This is the danger of black people who decide that they're going to be repeating what they see all the time, attacking words such as woke or going along with a phony definition of it, or attacking critical race theory. These are black people who have gone along with the okie doke. They've stopped thinking for themselves. And a group of people who have stopped thinking are a group of people who will never be able to plan their liberation. So family, make sure that next time that you're in a debate or any time that you're involved in a debate, not only do you arm yourself with knowledge, but make sure that you don't allow people to call themselves redefining words. That's part of how you got some scoundrel who's thinking that they're going to win a debate by undermining you before it's even began. In a society where you're trying to institute ideals of justice, it's an absolute requisite that you hold your ideological ground. And that being the case, you must debate, you must contend. You're going to have to persuade people, but more importantly, you're going to have to help people understand how they're being tricked and hoodwinked. And if you're going to do that, then you better get used to what it means to have the last word. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Mouse, Zell1, Kenneth Johnson, Sakina Collins, and Tariq. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.